300,000 kilometers of rivers. So we know that rivers, wetlands, aquifers, coastal zones are at the center of our water, climate, and nature nexus. This crisis that is barreling down on us from these three different dimensions. And the Freshwater Challenge places itself right in the center of that and acknowledges that we can't solve any one of these crises alone. We can't solve the transition to a low-carbon economy without taking account of the need for free-flowing rivers, for instance, when we're considering hydropower, which was our previous session that we were discussing. So this is trying to tackle everything, everywhere, all at once, up to a point, and using all the global mechanisms that already exist in order to do that. So the Freshwater Challenge was born at UN Water 2023, and we then had a huge growth spurt at COP28 in UAE, where we gained most of our members. We are now up to 53 countries, and I think it's worth mentioning that just in the last week, Madagascar and Namibia joined the Freshwater Challenge, very exciting. And in the last 2 months, Greece also joined the Freshwater Challenge. So we've now got 53 countries and the European Union. And this is a country-led global initiative. So we're supporting partners of this, but it's the countries that lead it, and it's the countries that are in the forefront of implementing this. And it's great to have many of our countries here and joining us online today. But although this is a country-led initiative, we know that it also takes scientific expertise, intergovernmental organizations, the NGOs that are working alongside us, local communities, and businesses. And in June, we launched the Business Supporter Program for the Freshwater Challenge. And we had these 3 global corporates joining up in June. So we already have Edeka, Reckitt, and GSK, who are aligning what they are trying to achieve, particularly through their water stewardship activities, with the Freshwater Challenge and the impact that we need to have on the ground. And there's I don't want to do a spoiler alert, but a teaser that we will have one of Sweden's most well-known and best-loved corporates joining the Freshwater Challenge in this very session here, so don't go away. So it's been a busy year for the Freshwater Challenge. We, as well as being part of the climate action agenda, having come out of the UAE climate COP, we are now very firmly aligned with the UN Convention to Combat Desertification, UNCCC, and we are also part of the Riyadh Action Agenda. When the UNCCC COP was held in Riyadh at the end of last year, the One Water Summit, hosted by Saudi Arabia and France, was held alongside it. And it was there that GEF announced, the GEF announced their support for the Freshwater Challenge with $5 million of funding that will come to support our activities. Most recently, many of us were together in Victoria Falls for the Ramsar COP, and a resolution was passed, which surprisingly for me, for the first time, focuses on freshwater ecosystem restoration and mentions the Freshwater Challenge in that as being a key mechanism and initiative. And we're also growing the supporter base. All of the IOPs at Ramsar have now also joined as supporting partners of the Freshwater Challenge. So there's been a lot going on, and we are really growing this coalition of the willing. Just some teasers for what's coming up. We have a freshwater restoration benefits study that's going to be released within the next 2 months. And of course, we are looking forward to Belém and working with the climate champions on the road to COP30. Our GEF project will start at the beginning of next year, and we will be piloting in Fiji, Brazil, Tanzania, and Cambodia, strategic planning for restorations of key rivers and wetlands in those countries. But of course, the lessons learned will be shared with all freshwater member countries. And the most important part of the Freshwater Challenge is about engaging countries where they are and helping them to elevate the critical role of rivers and wetlands in climate adaptation and water resilience, and to accelerate action on the ground. That's what we're all about. So just to remind you that, and now I'm going to hand over very quickly to our inspirational speaker of the day, Mina Gooley, who's so kindly joined us all the way from Australia and has been a long-time supporter and friend of the Freshwater Challenge. Thank you, Mina.
We'll be back. I feel like there must be something wrong with me. Everybody's deserting. Hi, everybody. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Mina, and for the last couple of years, I've been running thousands of kilometres in some of the most extreme places on the planet. From deserts like the Atacama, the Simpson at home in Australia, down rivers like the Nile, the Rhine, the Thames, and many others around the world, and through some of our most precious ecosystems like the Amazon. I run because, not because I like it, let's face it, running these like ridiculously long distances in some pretty extreme places is not exactly fun. I run because I want to raise awareness of the water crisis. I want to show the urgency of the problem that we're facing, and most importantly, I want to drive action. Action from people like all of you watching online and all of you in this room today. I think it's easy when we're in a place like Stockholm, when we're in big cities, we turn on the tap and water comes out. When we flick a switch on the wall and power comes out of our light globes. It's easy to forget that for billions of people around the world, this is not their lives. In India and in Kenya, I walked with women who were risking their lives every single day to fetch water for their families. In South Africa, we carried gallon drums of water out to communities, and we gave those gallons of water to kids who'd stayed home from school waiting for the water to be delivered because their towns had run dry. And just a few kilometres away, I met a farmer, 24 years old. His name was Christian. And he said to me, Mina, what hope do I have? To pray for rain or to leave my farm? And even right here in Europe, you guys have seen the consequences of our water crisis up front. I ran down the Rhine, a river that should have been full, and instead I was running under the bridges. And I watched as the barges were offloading passengers and offloading goods because they could no longer make their way down the river. This is harrowing, it's heartbreaking, and it's awful. But it does not have to be this way. In Australia, I met farmers who showed me this magical seed, and they told me this seed has enabled us to grow more crop per drop of water and enabled us to withstand drought. In Turkey, I met entrepreneurs working with some of the biggest luxury brands in the world, and they told me how they had innovated their entire supply chains using regenerative agriculture, reusing, reducing and recycling the water that they were using in their supply chains all the way through their industrial manufacturing processes. And in France, exactly a year ago, I had just finished running over 800 kilometres, the full length of the Seine River. A river that back in the 1970s was declared completely functionally dead, but which, as we all know, became the centrepiece for one of the most popular and famous Olympic sporting events in the world, the Olympic Games. These are incredible stories and incredibly powerful examples of what's possible when we actually get together and bring ourselves to commit to bold, collaborative leadership. But we all know none of these are enough. They're isolated examples and they are not enough. When I was climbing up through one of the melting glaciers in Tajikistan, and we were standing looking out over the valleys that used to be filled with these incredible white glacial paradise, but it's now just complete greenery. The guide said to me, Mina, look around you. The time for soft language is over. We need real action, and we need it now. He's not only right, he's not alone. Over the last few years, we have mobilised the biggest global grassroots community of people on the planet. We have moved over with thousands and thousands of people in over 200 countries and territories across this world. People who are moving, stepping up, sharing their stories and asking for more action for them and more action from every single one of us. Because for them, they want action on funding. How can we find better ways to deliver more funding and close the funding gap that we all know exists? How can we find ways to better future-proof our energy systems, our food systems, our economies, our societies, our cities, the data centres that are being built all over the world? But most importantly, how do we find better solutions to the fragmentation that we see across the entire water sector? Fragmentation of projects, fragmentation of ideas, fragmentation of solutions. How do we find better ways to come together to deliver the solutions and the action that people around the world are demanding? And this is why next year we're going to run a campaign focused on one of the biggest, most significant economically rivers in the United States, and that's the Colorado. It's a campaign designed to solve the funding problem, the fragmentation problem, and the future-proofing problem. But most importantly, it's a campaign that we're going to use to demonstrate the power of what can be done when we bring people together to commit to big, bold, audacious goals. Not only with this esoteric idea of collaborative action that we all talk about in places like this, but to actually committing to delivering it on the ground. Real, meaningful action where it's needed, when it's needed. And it will culminate in the first bipartisan commitment declaration to save this incredibly important ecosystem. I know when I stand here asking us to do all of these things, it is not easy. But if there's one thing I've learned from running these ridiculous numbers of kilometres in some of these extreme places, it's that we can do hard things. And especially we can do them when we work together. Doesn't need to be running. It can be committing to protect and preserve the most precious ecosystems on our planet. Which brings me here to this freshwater challenge and the reason we're all here in this room right now or watching online. The Freshwater Challenge is one of the most important platforms for the protection of our ecosystems that we have right now. But it is only going to be as powerful as the commitments we make to delivering on it. So that brings me to my ask. There's always an ask. To my ask of every single one of you, whether you're watching online or whether you're here in this room today. My ask is that you have the courage to put aside failed past practices and vested interests. The courage today to commit to big, bold, audacious ideas and to do the hard work that's needed to get there. But also the courage to stand up and ask for what you need and share what you have. Knowledge, ideas, resources, solutions, energy, whatever you have the courage to bring it to the table. Because if there's one thing that I know, it is that when we work individually, we can make an impact. But when we work together, we truly can change the world. The Freshwater Challenge gives us the opportunity to do just that. And today, we have an opportunity to say to ourselves, to everybody around us, to all our stakeholders who are depending on us to be here today with the courage and the determination to do something real and significant. Today, we have an opportunity to say, we take this opportunity, and today, we're going to make it count. Thank you very much.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Mina. It always surprises me whenever I hear you speak how much you don't like running. And yet you still keep punishing yourself, but for the cause. And that, I think, is admirable, and I think a lesson we can all learn. So thank you very much for your commitment to water. So now we're going to move to a panel. We've got a few questions for them. Then we're going to come to you, the audience, and hope that you've got some questions for them as well, and engage with us a little bit on some of the topics and issues around the Freshwater Challenge. So if I can invite the panel up. First of all, let's bring up Mohamed Diatta. Mohamed, if you can join us. He's Senegal's Sherpa for the UN 2026 Water Conference. We already should have Iara Bueno Giacomini online. She's the Director of Water Resources and Environment from the Ministry of Environment and Climate Change in Brazil. Ibrahima Tiam. Ibrahim, if you can join us, the Executive Director of Wetlands International Africa for the Western Coast and Gulf of Guinea. Joana Barata Correa, the Inter-IKEA Group Global Head of Strategic Sustainability Topics. And Philip Kust, who's the Social Impact Leader for RECIT. So you'll see we've got countries, Freshwater Challenge partners, and corporates as well with us. So it's a nice mixture of the partners that are surrounding the Freshwater Challenge as a country-driven initiative. Iara's online. Could you put Iara on the screen behind? Yeah, thanks very much. Welcome, Iara. Hopefully you can hear us okay. Excellent. Wow, that's a big screen. Okay. You're like a giant behind us, Iara. It's quite imposing. And actually, Iara, if you can hear us, let's go to you first, just so we can bring you into the conversation, given you're so far away. What's the specific support that countries can get from partners within the Freshwater Challenge to get the sort of protection, sustainable management and restoration happening in the freshwater ecosystems? Brazil's already doing an awful lot, but how does the Freshwater Challenge help you?
Well, first of all, thank you for the possibility to join you, even virtually. I'd like to be there on the floor with you, but I'm very happy being here virtually. And thank you for your question. I would say that Freshwater Challenge came on board in the beginning of the government of President Lula, and it helped us to really looking for the connection between the water and the environmental and ecosystemic agenda. And it helped us to understand that to be able to be successful in this agenda, we need to sensitize the water users that they and their business will be increasingly affected by the degradation of freshwater ecosystems. We understood in another way that these actors, they needed to be part of the solution, and that we needed to maybe change our discourse, the way we communicate with them, because maybe they are not aware that the hydrological cycle and the water balance include the vegetation, include the ecosystem. So how can we improve this communication with them? So this would be my first words, James, but I don't know if I share some more thoughts now or in the next rows.
No, thanks very much, Yara. That's great. So actually one important point I took away from that is about binding stakeholders together to solve collective problems. But we'll come back to you. Please stay with us. Let's move now to Ibrahima, if we can come to you next. What does that sort of cross-sector partner collaboration look like to you? What does it look like for wetlands? And have you got any sort of examples from your work that would demonstrate how countries can learn from that?
Thank you. Yes, I do have an example which comes from Senegal. You may remember from Nicole's presentation all the challenges that we face as far as rivers are concerned, based first on different needs from multiple users. This can be from agriculture, from industry, energy, and that's exactly the situation we have in northern Senegal with the Senegal River. And what happened is that because of multiple needs, actually one basin, one sub-basin, which is called Ndiael, didn't get enough water, and that has huge consequences for communities who were no longer able to have their local economy. It was also a lot of consequences for nature, for example, in terms of biodiversity. So what we did was we worked with the local authorities, we worked with water management authorities, we also worked with communities, and we finally got an agreement which helped to let the water flow again into the small sub-basin of Njael. You must know that those small wetlands actually look like a blind spot when we look at rivers. But at the same time, they have a huge importance for local communities. So then 3 years down the line, the Njael sub-basin was revitalized. It became again a grazing land for the local herders. They were also able to have market gardening. And also, something that is not very obvious, the migratory birds coming as far as Russia in Eastern Europe or the Netherlands in Western Europe were able again to get a stopover in the Njael Basin and therefore be able to reach their final destination in the Jute Park in some further area in West Africa. So this is an example of how multiple users, different stakeholders can work together, join forces to resolve problems in specific areas. And this is a good example that can be also replicated in some other places. And that's exactly what we are doing in Guinea-Bissau, for example, where we use the same principles as integrated landscape approach to actually work in coastal areas in Guinea-Bissau in collaboration with CIDA. So that's my example.
Excellent, excellent. No, very many thanks for that. You're the second person today who's told me the small wetlands are a blind spot in the process and yet critically important in connecting systems together. Your example really, I think, addresses the point that Mina raised about binding things together and working collaboratively for people and nature. So that's fantastic. Now, I realize that we've got, a long afternoon and there's some rather uncomfortable chairs here. We sort of need some soft furnishings. And I wonder, maybe you could help us there with that, Joanna, representing IKEA. But also, I believe you have something to let us know.
Yes, thank you so much, James. And it's great to be here and be listening to this very important conversation around the freshwater challenge. And as Christine was presenting in the beginning, this is a country-led initiative. But as we said the whole day today already, we can only do progress that is significant and long-term when we all come together. So we really applaud the effort that has been done within the Freshwater Challenge to put together a business supporter program that was also presented, and we are very, very happy to say that IKEA has now joined and is one of the business supporting this program.
Well, that's great. I think we need to give that a round of applause.
Thank you.
Excellent. So let's think a little bit further then. So when IKEA was, being motivated to join the Freshwater Challenge, how does that fit within your strategy as an organization when it comes to climate and water resilience?
Freshwater is crucial for our sustainability agenda, and it's deeply interconnected with the climate, our climate goals, our nature goals, our social goals. Everything comes together. It's about communities and all the sustainability aspects that are interlinked and adding on to each other. So that is the departure point, that the freshwater is really important for us. And it's important for us in supply chains and also beyond our supply chains and beyond our supply chains. And if you think that it's easy to do actions, specific actions in the area that you control and influence, when we then go into bigger freshwater systems and wetlands, we need to come together with others, because alone we will not manage to do meaningful and long-term impact. So it's really about how do we come together as a business and contribute to protecting and restoring ecosystems. This is critical to our sustainability agenda. And that is what was then the starting point for us to see, we see great value in joining the Freshwater Challenge, because it really allows us to contribute as a business and also to leverage from all the other dimensions of all the other stakeholders, and to really focus on the impacts and the dependencies that we all have to recover and regenerate wetlands and rivers. It's really about us coming together and 1 + 1 becoming 3.
I really love the idea about regenerating rivers and wetlands, and and how that partnership and that sustainability of them is aligned to the sustainability of the business.
Yeah.
So that's a very powerful message. Let's capture that and take that on board as we move on. We'll come back to some of those points when we come to Philip, I think. But let's move to you, Mohammed. So you are representing Senegal. You're deeply ingrained in the development of the UN Water Conference at the end of next year. You know, what does being engaged in the Freshwater Challenge really mean for you? Ibrahima took your thunder and gave a Senegalese example, but what does it mean perhaps more politically at the state level to be restoring these types of freshwater ecosystems?
Thank you. Ibrahima make life easier for me, and I will go through. Yeah. For us, the Freshwater Challenge is an initiative that is bold, both urgent and visionary. And we all know the reality: without resilient freshwater ecosystem, there will no climate resilience. And the Freshwater Challenge provides us with a bold collective response. Its ambition to restore kilometers of rivers and wetlands represent a paradigm shift, and this is very important for developing country like Senegal. And its goal to move from words to action, from pragmatic efforts to convergence, and from local projects to scalable global impact. For Senegal, this initiative resonates deeply. We joined the Freshwater Challenge during the COP28 in Dubai, and since when we are moving fast, and yet our experience also demonstrate that it's possible when action are taken. Ibrahima gave the example of Jael wetlands. We not only receive biodiversity when we restore ecosystems, but also securing drinking water for millions of people. The case of Senegal, Lac de Guiers restorations. Lac de Guiers represents 60% of Dakar capital city. 4 million people is for drinking water, and I think this is very important. And today we are restoring tens of thousands of hectares, mobilizing millions of cubic meter of fresh water and strengthening rural livelihoods. The lesson confirmed a simple truth: restoring freshwater ecosystems is not only an ecological duty, but an economic, social, and security investment, because investing on freshwater ecosystem is investing on water security. This is the key message that I want to raise here. And this is why the 26th UN Water Conference will give this agenda the prominence it deserves. In particular, Interactive Dialogue 3, dedicated to water, climate for planet, water for planet, will ensure that the Freshwater Challenge is anchored in a global agenda, and to continue this also in the context of this conference. It will offer a platform where governments, experts, and partners can align restoration with climate and biodiversity goals, track progress, and scale solutions that deliver real impact. And allow me to conclude by highlighting 3 priorities we must pursue together. First, integration. Freshwater ecosystem must be at the heart of national climate strategies, NDCs, and adaptation plans. I think on the road to Brazil, this message must be transmitted to states who are participating. Second, financing. For the financing, we need innovative, predictable, and equitable financing to scale ecosystem restoration, including through partnerships with private sector and water-dependent industries. We know that many of the fresh water are polluted by industries, and there is a pledge where industries must make. And lastly, cooperation, because rivers and wetlands knows no border, transboundary and cross-sectoral cooperation must become the norm when it's come to freshwater ecosystem governance. Water should be a bridge of peace and solidarity, not a source of division. And Senegal is very proud to join the freshwater ecosystem, the freshwater challenge, and on the road to 26 UN Water Conference, we can seize this momentum to make sure that freshwater ecosystems are in the program of the next UN Water Conference. Let us with urgency this crisis demand, and let us deliver measurable results. And I think that the way that the freshwater ecosystem is designed is measurable. We can make we can follow up and monitor these targets. And thank you for this initiative, and we will follow up and encourage this initiative. Thank you very much.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you very much, Mohamed. Thank you for that. So Mohamed is coming to Brazil to let you know all of this, Iara, on the road to Brazil. But I think I really like the idea of that you're putting the freshwater ecosystems as the foundation of water security, rather than focusing on water security first and then figuring out how we solve that. So that's fantastic. We'll come back to some of those points, but I want to give now the floor to Philip to give him the chance to bring in his perspective from Reckitt. You're one of the first adopters from the Business Supporter Program to join the Freshwater Challenge. You're the social impact lead for Reckitt. How does the Freshwater Challenge help you as a business scale up your positive social impact?
Well, thank you. And for those of you who don't know us, Reckitt, we are a global health and hygiene company. And if you not have heard of Reckitt, you will have heard of our brands, Dettol, Finish, Lysol, Vanish, Durex. So it's big consumer brands. And for us being in this space, water obviously is absolutely business critical, right? It's very similar to what Joanna was saying. So our mission is to create a cleaner, healthier world. The health of our ecosystems is foundational for the health of our societies and the health of businesses. And so that's how we look at that, right? We know that water is under threat. We know that climate change is making things worse. And if we look from a business perspective at some of the regions where we see the biggest growth opportunities, then those are regions that are severely water stressed, like in Africa, like India, like across Latin America. So it makes business sense to invest into water resilience and freshwater ecosystems. And so even before we joined the Freshwater Challenge, we had a very clear strategy around water that was focusing on 3 different pillars, sort of targeting our consumers, who are still to this day, are sort of through the product use, responsible for 95% of our water footprint. It's with the consumer in our case. So that might be very different from business to business, but in our case, that is a key contributor. And then, of course, it's within our communities where we know that only if our communities thrive, those consumers also have access to the water that they need to use our products. And, of course, for us as a business as well in our own operations, securing that water to be able to produce and have that resilience in our supply chain. So when we joined the Freshwater Challenge, I think it was really this idea of stepping up, being a pioneer, showing that we want to build on this commitment and show how we can align our actions with the international frameworks and the wider community, working collaboratively on these topics. We've worked with the WWF before on a lot of these topics. Since 2021, we've already restored freshwater ecosystems in Brazil, also in India. So it was sort of almost like a natural step for us to take that to the next level.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Philip. So the fact that you're pioneering in this space, but you've already got corporate experience. So it's not a heavy lift for you. You know what to do. You know how to engage in the process. And you're supporting the challenge and the countries where you're operating. So that's a great example, along with that of Joanna, of just corporates slotting into a process that underlies your strategy and fits very well into your intent as a business and the things that you need to make sure that you're sustainable. So I really like that idea. So let's just look up to the audience, see if anyone has any questions that you want to put to the panel, any questions on the Freshwater Challenge that you may have. There's a roving microphone, so it's up to you now. There's a question up the top there, please. Yeah. From Sarah, if I'm not mistaken. Let's take this question. Anybody else? Any other questions? Any other hands that we can take? We can take a few questions at the same time.
Okay. Thank you. I'll be sneaky and ask 2 questions.
Just let us know who you are and where you're from first.
Yes, Sarah Traubel from Qantas. We're an environmental advisory. I'm based in Switzerland, just like James. And in Switzerland, the public vote rejected the implementation of the Global Biodiversity Framework, so protection of 30% of the land. I'm wondering, from Mohammed and other country representatives that are here today, what have been your success stories in getting your countries to sign up? Will you collect those lessons learned to get more countries to join the initiative? Second question is to Philip and Joanna. It's around now that you're signed on to this initiative. I know for Reckitt it has been some time. What will this mean for your organizations? If you can share that. Thank you.
Great, thanks very much, Sarah. Anybody else? Any questions? Or we'll go straight to Iara. Can we come to you with the one first on how hard was it to get Brazil to sign up, or how easy was it? You know, what were the tactics that you had to employ? We've always tried to maintain a sort of political drumbeat with the Freshwater Challenge as well as an operational drumbeat. So, what's the secret to your success?
Thank you, James. Well, it was not difficult because the Freshwater Challenge is very aligned with the current Brazilian view of integration of environment and water management. And I can say that our water law has a specific item saying that the water management in Brazil should be made connecting and integrating ecosystems and water management. So we were just implementing the law, and Freshwater Challenge helped us to do that. But I can say that what is really a successful case that is happening right now to bring action on the ground is a coordinated strategy between different actors and projects that work on the territory, aligned with this national governance of water resources. So restoration is very complex and an expensive task. In Brazil, the restoration of river banks, lagoons, and springs, which are areas of permanent protection according to the law, varies between, I can say, $6,000 and $13,000 US dollars per hectare. So it's a very challenging task. And what we are doing here is to establish partnerships and a coordinated strategy with several actors that work in the same territory. So the Ministry of Environment is working with the accounting committee of Eletrobras, which is the energy electricity company, and the civil house to manage to use resources from the Eletrobras, around 130 million US dollars, to detail and implement environmental restoration projects in priority areas designed and planned by the River Basin Committee. So I want to highlight that we needed to bring people working on the territory, on the ground, to make it happen. And aligned to that, we have some covered areas which are adjacent to initiatives of another project, which is using money from conversion of environmental fine into restoration action in the basin. And finally, bringing the National Bank for Social Development to the strategy, which has a project of a match funding strategy, one by one, to gain its scale. And on the top of that, and very recently, we are following the same line of reasoning, proposing to the JEF, Freshwater Challenge, a proposal to build a conceptual project around $500,000 US dollar to recover marginal lakes of the same river, the San Francisco River, which could be replicated for other river basin committee. So what we're trying to do here is to really connect the different levels of water governance from the global to the local, because we have in Brazil 348 river basin committee, 10 federal ones and 238 regional ones. And if we don't connect this level of governance, we cannot inject money from international institutions to them. So I think it's one way that we could improve the action on the ground, because these people, this river basin committee, they already have their plans. They work on this in a very democratic way. And so instead of starting new projects, disconnect of this, that normally international institutions or financing institutions ask to us to do, we should maybe finding ways to implement projects and plans which are already planned by the territory. And doing so, we could also highlight the role of ecosystem, aquatic ecosystem, freshwater ecosystem in this water security discussion, and also implementing the SDG 6.6. Yeah, so that's what's working here in Brazil for now. Thank you.
Well, thanks very much, Yara. It's very comprehensive. I think key points that I took from that was establishing the right partnerships, coordination with actors, integration with existing mechanisms, and making sure they work within the governance systems that exist, and working very much with, well, multi-sectors, but people on the ground who actually see the challenges and are trying to solve them. So that sounds fantastic. I'm glad Brazil is such a strong supporter of the Freshwater Challenge, because you're such an important part of the planet when it comes to freshwater ecosystems. But let's go to you, Mohamed, from a country perspective. How hard was it to get Senegal into the Freshwater Challenge, or was it a relatively easy thing to do?
Thank you. I would like also to answer to the question of Sarah, and my colleague Cham will respond also. Yes, since 2028, Senegal joined the Freshwater Challenge. It was very easy, because the country has a successful successful model of restorations, like Cham presented. The Njael case was one of the successful example, seeing wetlands which was on Montreux register in wetlands in danger, and Senegal with making activities, planning and restoring ecosystem, bringing water again. We save this freshwater ecosystem, and I think it was a very big success. The second is we have restored the ecological function of the Lac de Guiers. Lac de Guiers is the main lake in Senegal and providing Dakar city water. And with several actions that we have made, we have restored the functional ecosystem of this lake. And today this lake is very safe. We have a monitoring system, and we are continuing to build a resilient system around this lake. And 3 months ago, our president launched one of the biggest programs on freshwater ecosystem restoration on the center of Senegal. It's near the Gambia River basins, and one of his branch called Bao Bolon. We invest more than $200 million to restore ecosystems, freshwater, to restore land degradations, and to stop salinizations, and to facilitate water supply for communities along this ecosystem. I think these are one of the activities that we are doing in Senegal. And in few years coming, I'm sure that we will restore millions of hectares of land, degraded land, and restore several ecosystem, mar and wetlands around our country. But it was very easier, and our government was very comprehensive regarding the freshwater challenge initiatives, and it was a concrete also proposals that we received from the freshwater challenge team, and we joined, and now we are following to see how we can also learn from other partners to leverage what we are doing in Senegal.
Yeah, so I think that's fantastic. So concrete proposals leading to direct action, which goes back to Mina's point at the beginning about needing to actually start to do things on the ground. We've talked a lot about the need to restore freshwater systems, but it's still always a challenge for precisely some of the things that Iara said in terms of the actual cost of doing it. So sometimes protection is definitely the first line of defense. But some of this is also about mobilizing multiple stakeholders and actors. So let's go to you, Joanna, if we can. You know, from your perspective, what do you see as some of the most important barriers to collective action at the global and national scale for your actions on the ground, and how can they be overcome?
I mean, I see two main barriers that we could focus on, and one of them is really securing there's a very clear framework and the process to hold the process together, and that really is facilitating the needs of the different stakeholders, and that we are all swimming in the same direction. Really stay focused and not get lost. And it's really about who is convening these processes to really make sure that we don't deviate from the objectives. Someone needs to take that lead, and it's not always very clear on who does, and we know that when that happens, things are happening. So that would be the first barrier, but it's easily overcome. We just need to come together and agree. But when we don't take that time in the beginning, it's usually confusing. And then the second one is really, I mean, from a business perspective, is now we have committed to this, really about making sure that this ends up in the priorities of the business units, of the action plans, of every co-worker. Because then when things are in action plans, we know they are implemented. And it's the context that we are all operating with is increasingly volatile, and it's very easy. There's many different priorities, but really allowing that to focus on what we have defined as priority and making sure there is enough time and resources allocated to them to make it happen. So it's really about focus. So I think these are two barriers that they are housed, they can be fixed, but we need to pay attention to them. And if we manage to solve them, it will really trickle down to action.
Okay, excellent. So basically, a lot of planning and alignment required as a business. Yeah. But once those plans are in place, you're expecting things to be done on the ground, the action to take place.
Yes.
So let's go to you if we can, Philip. Just to ask a little bit then, you've got experience, as you were saying earlier on, in Brazil and India. What's the lessons that you can take from that in terms of applying that experience elsewhere, or lessons perhaps to other companies about some of the key things that work? So for Joanna's example, it's really about action planning, but what's your examples from that?
Yeah, thank you. One thing I wanted to add before answering that is I think it's about, especially for the private sector, probably also for the public sector, kind of unlearning some learned behaviors. And I'm thinking about often we fall into the trap of saying this is a Reckitt initiative, or this is an IKEA initiative, or this is an EU initiative. And I think what we have to recognize is if we want to tackle these challenges on a global scale, we kind of have to drop that, right? And we have to see that we need to work collectively under a wider sort of holistic target. And within that, we can still say we are supporting that as Reckitt and as IKEA and as Senegal and everyone else. But I think that's one thing that I just wanted to say, and that potentially is a barrier for some players who have not yet joined the challenge.
Thank you for that. It's a very important point, actually. Yeah, it's not about your brand per se. It's about your contribution to the challenge and what you're trying to achieve as a business. Yeah, excellent. Thank you.
And sort of some of the lessons, and I think also to answer the question from the colleague, I think it's obviously within this framework, right? It's about assessing the risk that we have as a business. It's about committing publicly to targets that we have set, targets including like the ones set forward by the Freshwater Challenge. And then, of course, delivering on those targets, which is the hard part, and then also communicating about it. So us showing up here together, I think, is great, right? We need to do more of that, talking to policymakers, bringing this to the UN Water Conference and other global forums where we can really show up together and advocate for freshwater being an important element of these conversations.
Yeah. So key tactics, I suppose, that you learn along the way that you can then apply in practice is obviously not to own the results, perhaps as you would own other things as a business and own the KPIs, so to speak, but really about demonstrating a contribution to things at the national scale and also within business bodies. Have you, I suppose a question to both of you, but to all four of you really, have you seen any examples where those particular interventions have led to others coming to the table? You know, is there a sort of anchor approach, this type of project or this type of approach has led to others coming around the table and saying, how do we join that?
I'm happy to start. We have a strong partnership with Water.org and Water Equity. Actually, there is a panel happening tomorrow that you're very welcome to join. And as part of that, what they've done is they've launched impact funds, right, where private sector investors can invest collectively into funds that are then generating capital to be invested in water projects. And we're part of that, as are many other corporates like Starbucks, like Microsoft, like Gap and others. So that has been one example where I've seen in practice, some companies taking a lead role, investing into these funds, leading to other corporates following suit and almost like paving the way for others to follow.
Mm-hmm. Paving the way, I like that. Yeah, go on, Joanna.
With another example, I mean, we have this long-term partnership with WWF since 20 years back. And through our projects, that was also back to the question that you were asking, what's next steps for us? We have just finalized scoping the next phase of the partnership that we have with WWF. It has different thematic areas. One of them is water. And then specifically on water, we have now identified 2 projects where we will actively be working with WWF and other partners on the ground on restoring and regenerating freshwater systems. So it's really about MENA really doing action on the ground. It's time to put our rubber boots up and just go to the field. So, but yeah, I think the examples really around through the partnership that we have and have had so many years with WWF that are then bringing on a local level partners that we would never manage to connect with.
Right.
That are really, really important for impact to happen on a local level.
Yeah, yeah. Excellent. Ibrahima, any points from you on that at all?
Maybe I'd like to add to the first question of Sarah. I think the main difference between a place like Switzerland and most African countries or even developing countries is that people actually in African countries, many people depend directly on natural resources. Directly, it means that's the direct livelihood, be it fisheries or the land they farm or the water they get from the river, if you can remember some of the wonderful pictures of MENA. So that's the reason why local authorities, national authorities take very seriously whatever can contribute to conservation or restoring degraded ecosystems. And that's why they don't have usually a lot of problem to agree to this 30% goal.
No, thank you. So I think the problem in Switzerland is going back to the question that you raised, Sarah, is it's fundamentally down to agriculture. And I'm smiling when I say that because I know there's some people who work in agriculture in this room. But fundamentally, in terms of the challenge of restoring and protecting systems and freshwater systems where agriculture needs the land and the space and the water, and that's a challenging issue. So now we have a question up there, I see. Yeah, can we get a mic there to Michael? I didn't actually just put that point out there to spur him on, but I'm glad it has.
I already had my question in mind, James, don't worry.
Okay.
So I'm going to ask Sarah's question slightly differently, and I should preclude it by saying that I'm a huge supporter of Freshwater Challenge. But if I'm being perfectly honest, there's been a little lack of specificity in terms of what actually changes to MENA's challenge. So if you're playing devil's advocate, is this about packaging up what was already happening and putting it behind a big campaign? And I did say I'm a big supporter, so that's great. And I think there's value in that alone. But what I would like to hear from the panelists is what extra commitments are being made as a result of being a signatory of this? What are you doing now that you wouldn't have done had you not signed on the line for FWC? And what are your expectations, having signed there, what are the expectations of you to do differently and to do more that you wouldn't have done before?
Yeah, thanks very much, Michael. Maybe I shouldn't have prodded him. Question down here at the front as well. Could we take that one? We'll leave that question with you all to think through and a response, but let's go down to the front.
Hi, I'm Kiran from the Resilient Water Accelerator. I'm glad you picked that point up because my question is quite related. I was curious to know how the commitments being made under the Freshwater Challenge are being financed. Is it existing budgetary allocations made by various government authorities and under various existing budgetary provisions that are financing? Because I presume working on wetlands and river basins is very, very expensive, as Yara was also alluding to earlier. So I was just curious to understand where the financing for it is coming from. Thanks. Or is it that, you know, like it's the existing budgetary allocation, but really the Freshwater Challenge is designed to add the political momentum and just accelerate utilizing those existing allocations?
Sure, very good question. Any others before we go to the panel? Yeah, Mina, you want to have a question?
Yeah, sorry. I think that it's really amazing that so many companies, in inverted commas, and being a little sarcastic, so many companies have stepped up to this challenge. You know, when I look at this, I understand that this is an initiative led by the governments. But the most important thing about this initiative is that there is a seat at the table for every single one of us. It's not just companies, it's also the NGOs, it's civil society. There is a space for all of us. So I guess my question is, I am a little ashamed to be supporting and encouraging and saying this is an incredible initiative that has the support of so few organisations, where so few people are stepping up. And to answer the questions about allocation of funding, there's so little transparency and so little comparative leadership from those who have stepped up to say this is what we're doing, this is why we're doing it, this is how we're doing it. And yes, Michael, that they are all additional to the commitments that we've already made. This should not be about celebrating signing a piece of paper. This should be about celebrating the fact that we are coming together to solve these big problems that are impacting supply chains, citizens, voters, and stakeholders across the entire world. And I think we've got to be talking about the doing element of this. It's fine to be in this room. I said before, you know, the light comes on, drinking water comes out of our taps. It's super easy to be here talking in microphones and talking to each other. But there is no inclusivity of people outside the water space. We walk through these corridors, it's all water people. We listen, we're all here because we're committed in some way or shape or form to this. It's not enough. It's not enough to sign a piece of paper. It's not enough to be here in Stockholm talking in a room. It's not enough to be making commitments that you already made and dressing it up as something else. Because the people out there, they want more. They need more. The next generation needs us to do better. So I guess my question to all of you is to say, like, how do we do better? How do we get more companies to make more commitments, real commitments, new commitments that don't just look good on a piece of paper or in a report or create a media headline? We all know how to do that. But they actually make an impact on the ground.
Yeah, thanks very much. Thanks very much, Mina. So just a couple of points, just to come back on some of the questions, because I think we just need to give some context as well. Can we come to you first, Iara, in a minute? But just, if we go back to the first presentations we had at the beginning, the one that Nicole presented, which had the graph of freshwater biodiversity decline, and an indication of the state of our freshwater systems, is they are the worst health we've had for 40 years. And it's very convenient for us to be here in Stockholm and to see the rain that we've had. For those of you here on Saturday, the torrential tropical rain we had on Saturday, it's surrounded by water. But actually the city of Stockholm itself has got some water stress at the moment in terms of the quality of the water due to an unseasonal warm summer that's affected the quality of the water in the lake that Stockholm gets its water from. So these problems are all over the world, irrelevant of if you're in a developed country or if you're in North or Southern Hemisphere. So restoring these systems is critically important for people and for industry, for our economies and for the biodiversity that we've dramatically lost over the last 40 years. So I think it's really important to understand that the multilateral conventions, the multilateral environmental agreements that we have that shape the commitments that countries make, generally have failed on freshwater for the last 40 years. They're not strong enough on it. They don't recognize the role in water. A large amount of the restoration programs around the world are targeted to terrestrial ecosystems, to forests, grasslands, drylands. Important work, don't get me wrong, but the role of water within that has always been assumed to benefit from terrestrial work. And as we see from the types of curves that Nicole showed at the beginning, that's just not the case. We're actually really struggling when it comes to protecting these freshwater ecosystems. And the more that we go under water stress and the more that climate change bites, the more that we will use and abuse and stress them, including extracting groundwater. So it's not, it's a major challenge. So that's why doing more and seeing the change is so important. And that's what the Freshwater Challenge aims to try and achieve. So with that, I've given you all now long enough to sort of formulate a response to some of these points. Let's go to ERAU and sort of the simple question really, which I think is coming back to Michael, but also coming back to the question from the Resilient Water Accelerator, is what's changing? What's going to change as a consequence of your support and commitment to the Freshwater Challenge? And really, and how do you pay for it?
Thank you, James. Well, and I would add to that on the top, what's not being done yet, that a colleague made this question before. And I would say that maybe we should start talking about solution based on hydrological cycle and payment for environmental services of water resources in a way to change the communication. And bringing to the Brazil perspective, I would say that all the people and institutions supporting the Freshwater Challenge maybe could be part of the River Basin Committee in Brazil, which has election every 2 years, to really be part of the local governance. Because if you think the Freshwater Challenge is an amazing initiative, but it's running parallel to the local governance. It's not the way which the water governance is institutionalized. So I think we should bring the Freshwater Challenge into the water governance, into the River Basin Committee, to help the committee, to support these committees to develop their river basin plan, bringing the freshwater challenges to the local cells to be discussed. And here, as I mentioned before, who's paying this bill? Who started to pay this bill in Brazil is the hydroelectricity sector, because they understand that the rehabilitation of a river basin will deliver services for them as well, for the electricity sector. So it's not a competition who gets the water, the agriculture, or the ecosystem, the energy, or the ecosystem. I think this is the main paradigm that you need to change, to shift, because we all need the water. We all want to make it work. So it's not competition. We needed to bring these sectors, these people on the same table, bring the hydrological cycle, the water balance equation, maybe to remind everyone how the ecosystem, how the native vegetation improve the rain patterns, the infiltration, and so on, to having as a starting point. That's not a competition. We want a solution which delivery for everyone, because on the other hand, if you don't do this, we will fail. The solutions which is connecting just for one term of the equation do not succeed in the medium or long term. So I would contribute with that. Thank you.
Great, thanks very much, Chiara. So it's not a competition, and the point is that you're trying to use the challenge to effectively reform water management and use that to provide solutions for everybody, and using the investments from some of the larger scale water users and impactors as well, such as hydropower. So let's take that on board then in terms of a set of ways of creating change. Who else now wants to tackle that question in terms of what's the change that you're going to make as a consequence of the Freshwater Challenge? What's the change your actions will lead to? So what change for you? And also, how do you fund that? How does it get supported, these types of actions? Who wants to take that on first? You want to go, Mohammed?
Yes, I think I want to raise one question that we didn't abord here in this session, is the issue of data. Yeah, the issue of data is very important when it comes to freshwater challenge. I know that being part of the freshwater challenge now, we are very careful regarding the data on freshwater ecosystems, and we are improving our data collection and monitoring all the freshwater ecosystems. Now we are doing so, and we are improving the systems and the information systems regarding this. I think this is very important to raise. This is the issue that I want to...
Okay. So there is an element of change in terms of understanding things better, in particular around freshwater systems. Philip, can I come to you? Yeah. What's the expected change as a consequence of your commitment to the challenge?
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you, right? And it's good also to be challenged on these panels, so I appreciate that. Even though it's difficult to answer sometimes. But no, joking aside, right? Very clear goal. The project that we do with WWF in the Tapajós region in Brazil, and also in Ganga region in India, is going to restore 1,200 kilometers of rivers. So that's a very clear target that we've also committed to this freshwater challenge, and we're going to publicly, obviously, report and disclose against that. And to Mina, to your point of like only so few corporates, well, fair enough, but also like we only launched the business supported challenge in June. So it's like, what, 2 months ago now, right? So there is a long opportunity still for other corporates to join us. And this is definitely one of the reasons why we're here, is to say, please do join us. So for any other corporates in this room who haven't joined us, this is your call to action, right, Mina? And obviously do commit to additional targets and not just sort of repack what you do.
And I can continue from Philip.
Yeah, please, go ahead.
What are we doing that we wouldn't do if we hadn't joined the Freshwater Challenge? These two projects that we are now starting up with WWF, I can tell you it wouldn't be these projects. We would have done other projects with WWF, most probably not focusing on freshwater ecosystems, degraded ecosystems that need to be regenerated. So I think this conversation has started in the beginning of the calendar year, and it led us to where we are now in August. This is not something that we have decided last year. And then what can we bring to accelerate? It's a bit what you were saying, Philip. We are hoping that by joining, we can give an example to other businesses that see that we actually do have a meaningful contribution to this. And it is also important. So on one hand, you do meaningful contribution. It's also important for your business. That is contribution number one. And contribution number two is we are hoping that with our voice, we can inspire other countries to join. Because if you look at the countries that are today already joined the Freshwater Challenge versus the area where IKEA production is taking place, where that happens in water-stressed basins, it's a huge disconnect. So we would like other countries, not pinpointing countries, but we would like more countries to join. So we're hoping with these two leverages, we are using our voice as an example.
Yeah, excellent. So we've got about 52, 53 countries signed up now, 53 with the European Commission. I know there's a few in the waiting lines as well, so hopefully that will map much better onto supply chains.
Of the water-stressed basins where we have identified where we have production units, it's 15, and they are in 6 countries, and only one of the countries is today in the Freshwater Challenge. So we have a huge opportunity. Yeah,
that's great. That's great, to grow and mobilize further action. So Ibrahima, let's come to you with any points you want in terms of what's Wetlands International, you're a core partner to this challenge, so what's the change for you, and what's the change you want to see as a consequence of working with countries and partners to get impact? And could we get the mic just down here, because there's a question down here, please, as well.
For us, in Wetlands International, in West Africa, we are working more on coastal areas. But I think Mr. Jatta just mentioned the initiative funded by the Senegalese government. And I think what we need to do is to mobilize more the countries to invest in freshwater. And in terms of the financing, I think so far the financing is coming from governments or international organizations in some way. But what we need to do more is really to get the companies who are using the water to also be funding conservation and restoration. And I think examples that the one that Chiara just mentioned about Brazil can be sources of learning for us as we advocate for that, those companies funding more conservation and restoration.
It's a very good question about the financing, because it's actually about recognizing where there isn't enough allocation at the national level into freshwater restoration, so making sure that there is. It's about trying to redirect national financing and mobilizing private sector partnerships such as these and such as ERA's example with hydropower. And also we as core partners are committed to mobilizing additional resources through different mechanisms we have to support countries trying to get action on the ground. We certainly can't fund, this is a sort of, this is a $1 trillion problem, right? But it's actually really about putting the seed financing there and helping direct resources so that more is going into freshwater ecosystems for their protection, for their restoration, and just improve management of what's already there. So it's a very good question. We could have an entire session on that. Maybe we'll do that next year. Thank you very much. Let's go, Christine, you have a question.
Well, in fact, it was in part to answer that question, because I think it's a really important one. And I think you've mainly answered it, to say that, together we are trying to push rivers and wetlands higher up the political agendas so that we can secure these national public budgets, so that this is not an afterthought of, some additional green spending somewhere. And also that when you're restoring rivers and wetlands, you're not just tapping into money for biodiversity, you're tapping into budgets for climate adaptation, for basic human needs for water supply and for water resilience. And so it's by tying it all together and working together in order to do that, that we hope we can secure the really significant budgets that are needed to do this work. And sometimes, as Nicole said right at the beginning, basically sometimes also all we need to do is get out of the way, and that, the problem partly sorts itself out when we remove some of the human impacts. But also to the question of growth, and Mina, I think that's a great challenge as well. I think as all of the organizations, corporates, supporting partners, and countries involved, we don't want to have a big hot air balloon, that's got loads of members all waving their hands in the air, without balancing that with the action on the ground. So it is that continual balancing of trying to grow sustainably and grow substantively in a way that reflects our real aims and our ambitions, and learning how to do that together, because we don't know how to do that. Countries are not yet planning. It's the triage of restoration. Which are the rivers that I'm going to bring back to life, that are going to see, our population and our natural resources through the next century of massive climate disruption? It's a strategic planning process that we haven't really embarked on up until now, and we want to do that using the best possible science, the best possible evidence, but knowing what can be put into practice, because we don't want to just set lots of hairs running and then have a big mess on our hands. We've already got a big enough mess on our hands. We want to fix it.
Yeah, thanks very much, Christine. I mean, this is the thing, we know what to do, we just are not directing it into the right places. So I think, but going back to Michael's question, I think it's just commit, Michael. I think that's the answer. It's commit. So just 30 seconds around all of you really is just, as a partner to the Freshwater Challenge, what can you bring that will help to accelerate actions at scale? What's the key thing that you think, this is the key thing that we bring to the table that's going to help accelerate actions? It could be the sharing of lessons, for example, but just something that's really just a really good, simple example for us. Can we go to you first on that, ERA, if that's okay?
Yes, it is. I would say dialogue to build a coordinated strategy and intelligence, connecting different levels of governance from global to local. Thank you.
Thanks, Yara. Philip, can we go to you?
I would say obviously lessons learned, like we sort of touched upon before, but also funding. We were talking all this day and also yesterday about private sector's role in funding, and that is something that we certainly want to sort of commit going forward as well.
Thanks very much. Ibrahima?
For me, it's overcoming fragmentation, and that means, for example, in West Africa, connecting our coastal work with our delta and river work.
Excellent. Joanna?
I think we can, by participating and supporting this program, show to other business that this is relevant for their businesses.
Thank you. And Mohammed?
I think experience sharing can help several countries to go further, but we have to improve also several policies in some countries where policies are very weak.
Right,
and
right.
To increase policies.
So using this to catalyze change at the governance level as well.
Yes.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you very much. Thank you, Aurelien. Please join me in thanking. You've all been up here a long time, so you probably need to take a seat. So can I ask you to take your seats back down? Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's it. Thank you.
And right, so now I'd like to hand over to Francesca Antonelli. She's the head of Rivers and Lakes for Wetlands International. She's going to give us some closing remarks and a bit of a way forward. So over to you, Francesca. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody, and thanks, James, and thanks to all our fantastic speakers today. I'm even more committed than before to the Freshwater Challenge, I have to say, after this event. I'm Francesca Antonelli from Wetlands International, as James mentioned, but it's really a pleasure for me to close this event. When the Freshwater Challenge was launched, I was actually with WWF. And changing hats didn't really change my commitment and motivation for the Freshwater Challenge, rather the opposite. And the reason is that I really firmly believe that the Freshwater Challenge can accelerate action for wetlands and water. And we have been witnessing such a water and water ecosystems blindness in the past years that the Freshwater Challenge has been an incredible, I would say, boost to our motivation to fight for these ecosystems. And I also believe that the Freshwater Challenge would really help countries to deliver on their water, biodiversity, land degradation, and climate goals. And we have been discussing this these days, and this is a crucial part of the Freshwater Challenge. So the session today, I think, has demonstrated that we have been going very much forward with the Freshwater Challenge, that we have created really solid foundations. We have now 53 countries that are members to this initiative and the European Union. We also have new supporting members that joined the challenge recently, IMI, WWT, and BirdLife. And we have big businesses that are jumping on board. I think this is really remarkable. And also we have funding which is flowing. I mean, the most striking example is the JEF project, which is going to start from beginning of 2026. But there are so many other projects that are supporting the implementation of the Freshwater Challenge that we heard a little bit about them today. This event is one stepping stone of this incredible journey. Ahead of us, we have COP30. It was mentioned by Mr. Diatta from Senegal, and we have also the UN Water Conference in 2026. And foundations are there, but a lot of work is ahead of us. And I think Mina made really the case. Thank you, Mina, for your inspiring words. The challenges ahead of us are big. Nicole reminded us about this. The threats ahead of us are very challenging, but we can't simply turn our back to all of this. there is no choice but going ahead. And this is for securing our own life. We should not forget this. This is to address the biggest challenges of our era, which are enhancing water and food security, which is reversing nature loss, mitigating and adapting to climate change, and driving sustainable development. So I want to close with a private note, which is to say, I'm in this business since more than 20 years. And I've been so frustrated that freshwater ecosystems were completely neglected. In Dubai, when we had the first ministerial conference for the Freshwater Challenge, I felt I could not believe my eyes and ears, so many ministers in a room pledging to wetlands and rivers. That was really emotional. So I hope that the next COP, COP30, will be a new step forward with a new ministerial to move forward and consolidate the commitments, onboard new members, and pave the way forward. And said this, I also hope that little seeds have been planted today, that Samina's challenge has been collected by each of you. And please come and talk to us if you want to help, if you want to support the Freshwater Challenge. Thank you.